matches?
No.
Well, some of you do and some of you don't. Well, some of you do and some of you don't. Well, some of you do and some of you don't. Well, some of you do and some of you
Howdy, folks. How you doing? It is 2:35 a.m. in the a.m. and that is Texas time. How y'all doing? Where did you see Susan? Where did you see Bigfoot Michigan Rob at? 9:35. Wow. Hey, Larry. Oh, look there, little bros in the house. Hey, Crystal. I'm gonna drop this, so if somebody wanted to jump on, they could. We're going to be talking about some Dogman tonight. I have snuff all over my keyboard. I was brushing it out of my beard. Dry snuff, by the way, guys. I don't spit and drool all over my beard. You know, I don't get to talk about the dark stuff a lot on the channel because nobody likes talking about it. And I get that. But like everything else, I think it needs to be addressed. And Larry, you're watching a police chase. So I thought we would go through one. I want to go through, and everybody's got their theories, guys. Everybody does. Counting myself about this critter we call Dogman. You know, and I've come to. I've been doing a lot of thinking. God, I've been doing a lot of thinking about what is this critter. You know, is it a natural creature? Is it not? Is it this? And I still come back to. I think. Hey, Brian. You too, brother. I still come back to. There's a natural aspect, at least, to them. I think there's the physical creatures that you have out there, but there's something else out there too. And I don't know if it's pretending to be something like a Dogman or if it's something that looks like the critter that is just completely freaking unholy. I just don't know. But let's talk about where I think they came from. Not the otherworldly things. And who knows? Hell, they all might be otherworldly. But like I said, there's the link to the show if y'all want to jump on in here and have a conversation with me. And I've got now, Susan. It depends where you're at. I've got it streaming on 3 channels. I've got it streaming on the Texas Front Porch channel. I've got it streaming on Rob's channel, and I've got it streaming on the Blondes of Booze channel. So that is true. Brian says, Tex, you know the devil is the father of lies and deception. He corrupts the natural. You know, I do. I believe that. But I don't think all of this stuff that we encounter out there is necessarily has something to do with evil. Why does it? You know, why? Um, I don't know what channel you're on, Susan. I don't know where. Hey, you know what? Everybody put in what channel you're listening to. You're streaming this from. That way, you know, maybe we can all get together in one bunch and y'all can see each other talk. Because I can see everybody. It okay. Here's a one dilemma. All right. Now, why is it? Yeah. What channel on YouTube, Susan, are you at? Um, why is it that these critters that just appear monstrous to us, we automatically assume there has something to do with evil, just because they scare us? Just because, hey Sue, just because they might do hideous things that we see as monstrous. But wouldn't we have the same reaction? Um, yeah, I did see that Big Texas is asking me if I've seen the video of the Sasquatch recently in Tennessee. I think that's the one I saw. Um, I'm still trying to figure out if I want to drink that Kool-Aid or not. But because honestly, guys, video and pictures nowadays, it's just so damn hard. I mean, who knows? But here's what I'm thinking, because we forget how exposed we are to a lot of different creatures out there, and we don't have the mentality of seeing something for the first time that would be absolutely terrifying to us. All right, I'm going to start highlighting comments, okay, and I'll get to them after I do my spiel here. So if y'all are making comments, try to put them in all caps, and so I'll make sure and I catch them, and that way I can address them, because I don't want to miss any. So let's take when the Spaniards first landed, okay, and they were on horses. Well, when the indigenous population saw them, they thought they were half man, half horse. Okay. What if these Bigfoot and Dogman critters are getting the kind of the same reaction from us? You know, there's something that we don't necessarily have in our everyday life. That's for sure. You know, you can't go down to the zoo and see one. But what if that's just a knee jerk, very human reaction from us? And I think that's a possibility, that they might just be part of the natural damn world. We just don't see them. They're very different from what we know of what we call natural creatures. But if you look in, back at the Native American lore and so many other, past civilizations, that they live side by side with these creatures. They talk about them like they're just, I was watching a thing and they were talking about, I believe it was the Cherokee, uh, seven lessons of the grandfather, I think it was. And the bear, the bird, the fish, all kinds of animals are represented. Six animals are represented, and Bigfoot is represented. There's 7 of them. Well, what if this was something in their everyday life that they were raised up to? And you hear this a lot. Well, we were raised up just like it was, part of nature. But, I don't even know how to say it. I guess modern man, in our arrogance, think we know that everything that's out there. But what if we don't? And what if we see these things and they absolutely terrify us? I don't think they're monsters, guys. I think they're monstrous, but I don't think they're monsters. I don't think they're waiting for you to go out there and give them a hug, neither. So, but you start looking at the Dogman, and you start looking back through history. Every ancient civilization has some kind of upright canine represented in their culture that I've looked at. And I believe that this is a very possible theory, is that when the flood happened, before the flood, they, look at the Egyptians. There were supposedly armies of these things that were roaming around. You had Anubis and everything. And a lot of people will say, well, that was just a mask, because there was a lot of others represented too. But what if a lot of the things, a lot of people say God with a little G, that's Jason saying, got wiped out by the flood. So, but a few of them, what we call chimeras these days, a few survived. Their populations are so low that we very, very rarely see them. And if they did, mainstream did say, oh yeah, they're there, man, look at the narrative it would absolutely shatter. And we all know how, academia, how arrogant they are. Thought we know everything, but they're constantly rewriting their books. Hell, the science books and history books that I learned from, there's been a lot of stuff proven wrong. So what if most of these things were wiped out by the flood, but a few did survive? Now we hear about the hyper intelligence of these creatures, both of them. And so let's take the Dogman. A few survive, but to continue their lineage, the survival of their species, they had to interbreed with the canines that were left. And that's why we see the drop in intelligence. Now, don't get me wrong; these are intelligent creatures; they're problem solving, but so is a raccoon. Okay. A lot of people say, "Well, animals don't play with their food." I beg to differ. You have monkeys playing. Gorillas will play with a dead monkey. They'll toss it back and forth. And killer whales will do the same thing with a seal. So, and you have lower primates that use tools, that learn things. You got killer whales that learn different aspects of hunting. They learn teamwork. They learn How does a killer whale learn to work together to make a wave and wash a seal off of a piece of ice? Okay. Um, and like I said, I am going through and highlighting comments, so I will come back to them. You watched what, Mom? So, oh, that ice thing. Okay, I got you. Now, the killer whale, and y'all have heard me talk a lot about killer whales and comparing their intelligence to Bigfoot. Well, I think you can say the same probably about Dogman, but as far as intelligence level, and killer whales, humans didn't even know this, fellas. We learned it from the killer whales that you can flip a shark upside down and put it in a catatonic state. Okay. They teach these techniques to pods that come over from another area. They pass on teaching techniques or hunting techniques. They strategically hunt. Okay, so all those arguments about this these critters being super intelligent and all this kind of, they're doing nothing that other animals have not demonstrated. Don't get me wrong. I think these critters have learned a lot. Now, you tell me what critter they've been around for thousands of years that is not technonic that have been using tools for thousands and thousands and thousands of years. That would be us. Okay. And if you think, if we have to give these, if we want to think that these creatures are as intelligent, half as intelligent as we give them credit for, we have to assume that they will learn from us, So, I mean, and let's jump off of killer whales for a second. Let's go to dolphins. Have you ever seen dolphins school fish together? I mean, that's incredible. They'll herd them like cattle. I have to wonder, maybe in some other world, maybe they're the dominant. The whales are the dominant, and dolphins and whales are the dominant species. Maybe they learn to walk. Who knows? And I want to throw something at you. I was having a conversation with a guy the other day. In the Bible, okay, and you don't see me refer to the Bible much, but in the Bible, and y'all correct me if I'm wrong, God said he created us in his image, right? But what if, and see, this is where human arrogance comes in, if you ask me. What if he did create other things, but we're the ones that he created in his image? And he may have created other civilizations, other worlds, and the dominant species were not in his image. That would still set us alone, okay? But that would explain so much. And it when you get to, if you're open-minded enough to think about all this, and I don't think it's sacrilegious to think this way at all. I think it's very arrogant, and I know I use that word a lot, but it's true. I think it's very arrogant for us to assume that we were the best of, and maybe we are the best of his creations, but maybe we're not the only one. And I don't pretend to know the theological side of things in and out. I won't sit up here and quote the Bible to you, okay? But when it comes to these Dogmen, it's okay. Let's jump back to Dogman. I know I'm going back and forth a lot, but I think if you'll listen to what I'm trying to say, maybe you'll understand what I'm trying to get at. So the flood wipes most of these critters out, okay? And for the survival of their species, they have to interbreed with the canines that are left. Possibly humans. I don't know. But I'm sticking with canines. Because I think if they bred with humans, we would see some totally different critters. But maybe we just haven't seen them. Or maybe we have, and they're the other things that we really don't have. We're not putting two and two together. Mm-hmm. Regardless, let's stick with canines. Now, C.D. Squatcher could sit here and she could correct me on a lot of this biblical stuff that I'm talking about, probably. She may not have the same view, and that's okay. Because I got to tell you, I respect that woman. She's one of the toughest women I've ever met. One of the toughest people I've ever met. Very, very smart lady. That would explain the interbreeding with the canines. That would explain the different looks that we see. That would explain the drop of intelligence. That would explain the the lack of patience that they have with humans. It would explain a whole lot. Maybe they once had the ability to speak, but I don't think the biomechanics would allow for that. But what are you doing up at this hour, C.D. Squatcher? Corey, you're right. There's never been a recorded attack on humans by an orca in the wild, only in captivity. Right. And they noticed a pattern. If y'all haven't seen this documentary, I strongly suggest you go watch it, but watch it with a box of tissues in your lap. It's called Blackfish. And when I finished watching that, I swore I'd never go do another sea life park again and support that. I'm not a fan of zoos either. I don't think animals should be caged up. That's just how I feel. So, you know, it when we jump forward in history, and now we're post flood, and we're getting these critters that are trying their best to let their species survive. But maybe along with the interbreeding, they can't reproduce like they used to. And so that would explain also the low population that we see. I do think there's a bigger. I do think there's a bigger population of Bigfoot, Sasquatch, whatever you want to call it. I don't think these physical creatures jump in and out of portholes. I don't think they cloak. They are masters of their environment. People talk about, I don't know. I looked away for 2 seconds and it was gone. I got news for you. People can do that too in the woods. It's very, very simple. You hear about it all the time with people disappearing. I'll tell you a little story from basic training. We were on a 20-mile march. And one of our drill sergeants jumped out ahead of us. And now this is a company of 300 people marching down this 2-lane road out in the middle of nowhere on this base. Half of us walked by him before he stood up right there in the bar ditch. He'd been laying there that whole time watching us walk by. None of us saw him. Situational awareness, folks. A lot of us like to think we have it nailed down pretty good. But we don't. And especially in this day and age with the phones, just look at the videos of people walking into posts and walls and other people. You know, there was a guy, we were having some work done by a contractor at work. And they had a crane. This is a bright orange crane, folks. Well, it wasn't even a crane. It was a man lift, boom lift. They'd let the boom down about 6 feet. Hi, sweetie. Boom lift. How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
Doing good, doing good. What are you doing up at this hour?
Well, you said you were going to come on, so I decided to get up.
Well, that's awful sweet of you. Thank you. And you know what? I'm going to choose to believe that.
It's true.
Well, maybe you can help me out here.
Okay.
You kind of heard me talking. And what do you think about the remark that I made? If you heard it, about God making us in His image, but maybe, we are the ones that He made in His image, but maybe He made others that weren't in His image that would still make the Bible true.
Okay. Well, a lot of people talk about Nephilim theory all the time, but I'm not a big fan of it.
Mm-hmm.
To me, Nephilim, first of all, it says giants. And
Right,
it's
right.
like it's hanging this huge doctrine on just one scripture. And I think that what really happened, yeah, there were giants, but I think that what brought down the Israelites was just marrying heathen women, because it happened to them over and over and over and over again. And to me, if the giants were angelic, then they're different kinds. The Bible says everything after its own kind. And so any kind of dog, if you have wolves or dogs or you know, foxes, they're all wolf kinds, and they're all dog kinds, they're all canines. And zebras or horses, equines, can breed with zebras and other horse kinds. But I don't think we're the same kind of creature, because the Bible says that we're flesh and blood, and spirits and angels are a different kind, and that they don't have substance, they don't have human bodies. And so they can look like they have a human body, but that doesn't mean that they have the same DNA, or that they even have the same body parts, that they could breed with humans. So I don't know. Dogmen are difficult. I haven't come down to deciding 100% whether I think such things are natural somehow or unnatural, whether it's Dogman or Bigfoot. But you were talking about speech, and that's interesting to me. So something about speech is that you have to have the proper, first of all, you have to be vertical. You think of things that talk, we're vertical because we have control of our diaphragm, and that controls our airflow. And so in order to make speech, like monkeys can make a lot of speech sounds, but they can't speak because their brain doesn't sequence sounds. And the sounds, I'll call them phonemes, that's the right word. They don't sequence phonemes into words. And because they don't sequence phonemes into words, they don't make sentences. They don't make words, and they don't make sentences. And a language, to me, language is it's a super complex thing. For me to talk to you, we both have to have the same ability, the same functioning for language. And so originally I was saying physically, in order to produce speech, you have to have this upright column of air with a diaphragm where you can actually control the finer vocal cords, control the way they move to make certain sounds. And a baby, when it's born, can make the sounds of every language in the world. And it learns to make them all, it practices them all, and the ones it hears are the ones that it reinforces and learns to speak. And then it learns the language of the group of people that it's born into. So, and then on top of all that, there's what has to come up here.
Right.
It has to be cultural. If I say abstract words, then you have to understand, and I mean like theory, or if you're going to go into calculus or higher math, or even love or hate, those are abstract words, and we have to have the same understanding to discuss them. So to me, something with the language, the only things in the Bible that have language are God and angels and humans, and nothing else. The only place you see an animal talking in the Bible is Balaam's ass, because the angel spoke through it, or God spoke through it, and the serpent. And we don't know what a serpent looked like before it was cursed.
Right.
So dogmen, I don't know where they came from, nor do I know where Bigfoot comes from. But if they're supernatural, then I don't trust them. Because...
Well, I agree with that.
Well, I think that what people miss is the goal of the devil.
Yeah.
He can be as nice and as wonderful and as helpful as possible. because his only goal is so that you never trust Jesus as your savior. So you never get to go to heaven. And we're like
Right.
the prize. Him and God are fighting over, and he uses all kinds of things with us. Um, he gives us things that we want, or he can give us things we want, like fame and fortune, and I mean, he can bring all those things, into our lives, and give us all the stuff that we consider good stuff, or
Right.
help us, or save our lives, or tell you where your great aunt buried her treasure. Because
Right.
the devil, they're eternal beings. They could look at you and watch you. They haven't died since creation. They're going to live. They're eternal, and so they know where your great aunt buried her stuff, and they can tell you, and they can help you, and then you're going to look at them, and you're not going to look at the Lord. So that's, you know,
Yeah.
so I'm confused on the whole topic. I don't think dogmen, especially to me, are not evolutionary products, and I don't believe in evolution to begin with. But to me, they're not products of something like
Well,
evolution.
I believe in evolution. Okay,
I don't.
but I don't. Well, hang on.
That's okay.
I don't believe it took place like mainstream science is saying over millions and millions and millions of years. Okay. Well, let me back up. I think it could have, because I'm not too sure that we measure time just like God does, because we created time, you know. Um, so I think it's a very good possibility that, you know, a week or a day of his time may be 10,000 years of ours or whatever, you know. Um, but I don't think we have all the answers like they think they do, you know, because every time you come up with science comes up, well, it took millions of years to form this. Take the Grand Canyon, for example. You know, there's just as much evidence saying that it was created in a short period of time. It was created a long period of time.
Mm-hmm.
Now, because if it was, there's ruins down there now. If erosion can constantly takes place, you would think that these ruins that have been there a few hundred years or whatever they say, 1,000 years, whatever, they would have a whole lot more beachfront property.
Well, I think there was we kind of don't know what the pre-flood civilization looked like.
Or exactly.
So, and the Grand Canyon could be an artifact of the worldwide flood.
Yeah.
I believe in like microevolution, like little things can change
Yeah.
over time, but I don't believe in major, like one species becoming another. When I was in school many moons ago, they had the history of the Eohippus, which was how we got the horse, and it supposedly started out as a mouse creature. And the last time
Yeah.
I interpreted an evolution film in a public school, and they had this little animal that lived on, this is the new thing, they had this little animal that lived on land, and then it got really wet, and so he had to swim a lot, and he had to learn to eat fish. And he started out on land, and then because it got wet, he went back into the water, and then he eventually, I mean, this is what they say, that
Yeah.
over millions of years that his nose moved up to the top of his head so that he could be in the water, and his appendages became fins, and he turned into a whale. And so, this is the new theory. And they have this little animal that they found in an area that used to be underwater that's now a dry bed. And then they have this other thing from another area. And then this third thing, and they put them all together and say that it changed from being, first it was in the water, then it was on the land, then it went back in the water. And that's the new theory. And it's like,
How do they? But how do they know that if they don't have DNA of these creatures? Because DNA doesn't survive the fossilization process. So if you don't have DNA, you know, um, how do they know? How can you tell just by looking? You know, I mean, because my argument there is with these folks, you wonder, you stumble across a skeleton out in the brush, and there's a reason that they have to give a class on how to tell a skeletonized skeleton a skeleton of a bear hand, a bear paw versus a human hand, because they look so much alike. You know, so and if you go back to the Triceratops, for years and years and years and years, they had all these different species of Triceratops. Well, now they're just saying, oh, it was just different ages. Well, bottom line is all they have are theories. They don't have any concrete proof to me, but I don't know. I just, and it leads me right back to human arrogance.
well, there's fossilizations that make no sense. They go through 2 or 3, like Jurassic period and
Right.
Pleistocene, and it's like one tree, and it's got it's like thousands and millions of years. But if you go back to basics, like if you're a nurse and you get stuck by a hypodermic or something,
Mm-hmm.
and this patient had AIDS, then immediately they take a baseline test.
Right.
And they check your blood, because it takes at least a week, or it used to take longer than that, for your body to make the antibodies that show AIDS, because they can't test for the virus, only for the antibodies. And so they do a baseline test. And if you test negative, and then at a subsequent time you test positive, then they say, well, it was the stick, and that's how you got the AIDS virus. But there's no baseline test for evolution.
Right.
The whole theory falls apart when you say, what's the baseline? When you're carbon dating, what's the baseline? You can know at what rate certain carbon-16 is going to disintegrate.
Right.
You know the half-life, but you don't ever have the baseline of whatever object you're testing to know what it was like there in the beginning. I mean, was the Earth supposedly totally radioactive at one time? How do you know?
Right.
They have nothing. All they have are skeletons and fossils. But in order to create a fossil, you need 3 conditions, because if a dog dies, or any animal, it's just going to rot.
Right.
So in order to make a fossil, you have to have it die, and it's probably a sudden death. It's a quick covering.
Right.
And pressure. So it's got to die quickly. It's got to be covered quickly before it rots, and there has to be pressure to fossilize it. And so that sounds like Noah's flood to me. And you look at how all these things are put together, and you find mammoths that still have food in their mouth.
Right.
I mean, that was a quick death, and it suddenly went from eating something tropical to being frozen solid.
Yeah.
That was like, to me, the Bible says that the fountains of the deep were opened up, and the sky was opened. And so I kind of go along with the greenhouse theory, that the earth was covered with a protective layer. That's why people lived longer. All of the rays were filtered out in this bubble that surrounded the earth. That's why it didn't rain. There was no weather, because the winds create the weather. And the earth was watered by the dew, and people lived longer. And when sin happened, or when Noah's flood happened, it was like the whole earth, like a big unzipping came along. Yeah. The fountains of the deep opened up, and the whole crust moved. And there's some Even the scientists admit that we're slipping on the inner core of the earth right now because it's molten and it moves. Even now we can measure how much it's moving, and that the waters came down, but the waters came up. And
Right.
so everything happening at once it killed everything on land and anything that that couldn't swim was going
Yeah.
to.
Yeah.
So,
And the when I say, he created, maybe he created us in his image, okay, and on this world.
uh-huh.
Now I'm going to take an alien jump here. Maybe he created beings that are intelligent and everything like we are on other worlds, but not in his image. Maybe that could explain the aliens, the UFOs, depending on how you believe. I'm just saying that would explain a lot.
Mm-hmm.
You know, on both sides, on both camps. You know, um, so I don't know. I think it's just hard, and I keep trying to get my mind wrapped around this stuff. But jumping back to Dogman,
Mm-hmm.
um, I don't think, I just don't think these critters are the evil things that a lot of people make them out to be. Are they mischievous? Do they like harassing us? Yes. But if you look at the behavior of other animals, you see the same thing. You know, I mean, a cat will mess with you. I've seen cats hide behind stuff, jump out and scare people. Why they do that? Because it's fun. I mean, we talked about other animals playing with their food.
Mm-hmm.
You know, um, a cat batting a mouse around and not killing it. Why? It's fun. They're not being sadistic. They're just having fun. Well, they may well, they're cats. They may be very well sadistic. I don't know.
Okay, there you
If
go.
there's an evil creature out there, by God, it's a cat.
Well, if
But
it's, oh, go ahead.
I was just going to say, I think we make we have knee jerk reactions to stuff that scares us, and that's one thing that I've had to, going out, just like you, going out in the brush and you know, boots on the ground, that type of thing. We know what's out there, or we know what's potentially out there. Let me put it that way. And yet we're dumb enough to keep going. um, but when you're doing this stuff, you can't let yourself react that way. You have knee jerk reactions to stuff. One, like I'm a very big proponent of not reacting when you hear or see something out of the brush. You've been out in the brush with me. Um, because I think we can play on Bigfoot anyway. I think we can play on their curiosity. And honestly, I think if you ignore them, if you hear something, you ignore them. They think they're getting away with it. They feel safe. They'll move a little closer. They'll do something. They'll get a little more, rambunctious, a little more raspy, a little brave. And um, that's been my experience. I can't say they're all like that. I'll never say they're all like that because I don't know. It's just like certain Bigfoot, certain Dogman killing people and all this kind of stuff. I think they're no different than humans are at that point, because there's good and bad and everything. Look at dogs. Look at all the stories of these people that have these family pets for years and years and years. Best dog you ever meet, and it mauls the baby to death. Why? It had a bad day and it pissed it off. I mean, you know, it annoyed it. I mean, and it acted like a wild animal would. You know, it felt threatened or something. We don't know, but you hear those stories almost on a daily basis over the news. Or a weekly basis anyway. Um, Now the whole pet snake eating the baby thing, that what do you expect? I mean, come on. But um, I just I think it's. Oh, and I'm gonna pause real quick so Randy won't yell at me real quick. So I already booked the 52-minute mark, but he can make it up on the front side. I'm gonna say bye to our Howard listeners and our Odyssey listeners, and we're back for the second half of the show. Um,
All righty.
that gives he does all of our editing and stuff for the podcast, so that gives him a place to break it at. As we were discussing, the attitudes of different animals, especially wild animals. Well, I don't care if they're wild or um, domesticated or not, can change in a blink of an eye.
Yeah.
You know, um, get close to a dog when he's eating. You've had him for years and years and years. You walk up and you just pet him. He turns around and bites you. He's never done that in his life. You scared him, or something. And so it's just, I think, calling these creatures evil, and I don't even like calling them creatures, these critters evil, I think I think it's just, we don't have enough evidence to say that. Now, when I say that, I'm talking about, and I'm going on the assumption here that we're talking about the physical creatures. Now when you get into the metaphysical, otherworldly, spiritual, demonic, yeah, well, that's a whole different ballgame. you know, um, there's things out there that do have nefarious um, ideas. I think we've being out there in Brown Spring, we've run into a few. But as far if we go from the standpoint that what we're talking about are physical creatures here, they're wild animals. I don't care if you're talking Bigfoot and they're an offshoot of human. It doesn't matter. They're not. They're not civilized. They're not domesticated. But even when you start talking about humans, how many stories do we hear about? Well, he was the nicest guy in the world. I knew him for 20 years. He never did anything to hurt anybody. Why? Well, I don't know why he walked in and shot 20 people. you know, every being, and I'll use that term. Every being on the planet is unpredictable when it comes to that. Um, but I just don't think we have enough evidence to say, "Oh, these things are evil. Are they dangerous? You damn Skippy, they're dangerous." But waiting behind every tree just to snatch you up and kill you, I don't think so. I mean, if that's the case, me and you wouldn't be sitting here talking.
Yeah, we'd have been lunch already.
Exactly.
Now we had a, all right, let me start over. We lived in the country when I was little, and we got a lot of animals dropped off. And I still lived there as an adult. I inherited the place after my parents died. And somebody had dropped off a big white German Shepherd. It was beautiful. And I took it in, and I was feeding it and taking care of it. And it was like the first mowing of spring, and I lived up north, so there were a lot of branches and stuff down. And so before mowing, I was going to collect the big branches. And I was watching the dog and my son, who was 2.5, 3 years old. And my son didn't do anything. I mean, I saw him doing nothing to the dog, and the dog just bit him, took a piece
Mm-hmm.
out of his ear. He had to have plastic surgery.
Mm.
Of course, I wanted to shoot the dog. my ex at the time said, "You're going to shoot it." I don't think he wanted to dig a hole that big, but anyway.
I've had to do that. That's no fun.
Anyway, I called the Humane Society and I told them this thing turned on my child and bit him, and my son's running around looking like a mummy because they don't want that skin graft to move on him. So anyway, they took him and they took the chain. And my husband's like, "Why did you let them take the chain?" I'm like, "If you wanted the chain, you should have been here and got it yourself." I was mad the whole thing. But anyway, I don't know when Adam and Eve sinned, it happened. Something happened. That's when briars and thorns happened on the plants. It's when the ground didn't yield its strength anymore. It's when animals became unpredictable. And some people feel that that people didn't eat flesh until after the flood. I have no clue about that. But things changed. Animals, everything changed. Everything was affected. Weather was affected. What we thought about ourselves. When Adam and Eve were put out of the Garden of Eden, the whole earth was against them. Like I plant seeds and what grows, some of it's good and some of it's bad,
Yeah.
And something changed, and you read about what's going to happen when the Lord comes back in the millennium. The lion isn't going to eat the lamb anymore. They're going to be friendly. They're going to play. And he said, "Nothing will hurt or destroy in all of my holy mountain." And so it's going to go back to something kind of like pre-flood, except people are still going to have a free will because there's going to be an uprising of people.
Right.
People say, "I wish the Lord would come back and just set up his kingdom and everything would be all right." But there are a lot of people who really don't know what that means.
Yeah.
It means you're going to live the way under the rules that he laid down for righteousness, and everything will, people want justice, but if you speed, do you really want justice? Not all the time. You just want it for other people who are, but you don't want it really for yourself. And so, but when the Lord comes back, everything will go back to being the way it was supposed to be, supposedly. And even then, that's not the end. The millennium's not the end. The end comes after that.
Well, I think I think there's a lot of people that are hoping, and praying for the second coming, but they're not going to be happy what happens when it gets here.
Oh no.
When I had my Dogman encounter, I have such a problem describing the way I felt because I was scared, you know, and I thought, I remember thinking this thing could have killed me without, you know, any effort.
Yeah.
But for some reason, I didn't feel like he was going to or he wanted to. He was just trying to tell me, leave me alone when he turned his head and growled at me and then dove over the fence. I mean, he could have very well stopped, turned around, and tore me limb from limb right there in the middle of the road, but he didn't. The second time I ran into him, I fully believe that was probably him that was coming through the brush. I didn't see him, but good night, YJ. It. I don't know how long he followed me. I didn't look back, But I think probably when he saw me take off running, he didn't chase me very far. Why expend the energy if you're not going to try to kill me? If they're an apex predator, they're not. I mean, if he didn't want me as a meal, he wasn't going to pursue me. He ran me off. That was his goal, and I think you know, that's what it is. And I think of a lot of encounters that people talk about Bigfoot and Dogman being aggressive. I don't think it's aggressive. It's a scary encounter for sure, getting bluff charged and yelled at and trees shook at you and that type of thing. But I don't think it's aggressive. I think it's trying to keep it from, I think that's these critters trying to keep these things from escalating. They're trying to scare you off because they don't want, they don't want to tangle with you. One, they don't know if you got a boomstick or not, and those things hurt. I don't think that they have the technical knowledge or awareness to be able to tell a gun from a camera. Because if you think about it, the inner workings of a camera, maybe not the digital ones so much, but the older cameras used light machine oil, just like gun oil. Because, they would smell the same. All they know is you're holding something up to your eye, because if you think about it, when you hold a camera and you stick it up to your eye, that also resembles what you do with a gun.
Mm-hmm.
So that very well could be just them, when they avoid the cameras, that could be very well just them assuming that this thing is going to hurt me, and they're avoiding that too. So I think that goes with binoculars. I think that's anything that you move up to your face, even flashlights could possibly, go that route. They don't know if that beam of light's going to hurt them or not, I think we give these things a lot of credit for being technically savvy. They're not. But I'll never call them monsters because I don't think they are. It's like I said earlier, they're monstrous. Don't get me wrong. They're scary, but they're not monsters. I don't think. There are monsters out there, but I don't think what we're talking about tonight qualify.
I don't know what they are. I don't know what Dogmen are, and I don't know what Bigfoot are. I think I've thought more about Bigfoot, and I've talked to people who are sure they're human. And if they are, then that would explain a lot of things. Why they have language, why they build things, why crying babies will affect them. Especially you hear tales of them coming and cooing at crying children, or just watching children play. I mean, even as adults, most people enjoy that. And so, if they're a type of human, that would explain a lot of stuff. And if they're supernatural beings, then that puts them in a whole nother category.
Right.
And, I saw one of the comments, well, I think God made tons and tons of worlds and beings, and he made man in his own image. He didn't make horses and giraffes and, that sort of thing in his image. But he did make everything on earth that's alive to have a genetic code, and it does reproduce after its own kind. And so it would be interesting. I mean, we've had some work done on the genetic codes of DNA of Bigfoot, and they come back as human or partially human. And like I said, I don't believe they're human angelic hybrids.
No, I don't either.
And the whole Nephilim theory is something I would debate with anyone.
Yeah, I don't think they're Nephilim either. I don't. Are those creatures out there? Very possible. I mean, the reports that we hear, um, of what people witness and see. I mean, we had Duke on earlier,
Yeah, I
and
watched that.
yeah, the whole six-toed double rows of teeth. How do you explain that? Um, 15 feet tall. I mean, red hair, and who knows? I think, and this is my personal belief, as far as Bigfoot goes. Um, that where was I going with this? Now, who's older, me or you? um,
I think I.
um, that Bigfoot is because we obviously have. There was obviously more of kind of stuff, kind of like us walking around at one point. You know, I
Mhm.
mean, we've seen the skeletons. We've seen, and they just don't. Maybe that's just what Bigfoot is. I mean, it's just you know. Maybe it is something that just happened to survive the flood. Maybe it is something that um, he chose. God chose to let live. I mean, I don't know,
Mhm.
but I do think they have something in common with us. But I don't. You know, I think it's enough for it to come back as human.
Mhm.
But they're also in these DNA studies. They come back as it's not human. It's partially human. And they can't identify the other. So I think somewhere down the line on that family tree, we went left and they went right. That's the only way I can explain it. You know,
Yeah,
because,
well, that's still evolution to me. So I
well, it is, but I
don't think
don't.
so.
Well, I don't think it. Well, it's like I said though.
Well,
Who knows?
whatever's
Who,
making them say this part's not human, it's
right,
like well, everything that we how do I say this? There's a genome out there for nearly everything, and if all these genomes are the same, and
right,
that's what I would wonder. I mean, when they're saying it's not human, is that part consistent among Bigfoot? Is it
mm,
consistent among all the samples?
yeah,
Is it or does it vary from one sample to another? Is that part that's not human the same, or is it different? And I think
right,
that would tell us something. But um, I don't know. To me, it's either human or animal, and there's a dividing line um, because God made people different. He gave us language. He gave us moral qualities, and I mean, we ascribe personality and intent from our own personal backgrounds.
right.
I don't know why this thing didn't attack you. I've heard a lot of big man, dog man stories that seem like they're just trying to scare people.
Yeah, yeah. They
They're
like
not trying to
definitely.
kill them, they're just scaring them.
But
And
so did Bigfoot. That's why they chunk rocks at us. I've had them sit there and chunk rocks in camp for a couple of hours. Just and they
yeah,
weren't, you
and then
know.
the Sisters of the Moon think they're playing. It's the juveniles just playing. Yeah, and so
I have to agree with them on that. I really think it's just the kids messing around.
well, I had a couple of experiences, and I think the intent was different. I've been kind of paced
Hmm.
twice. And the first time I had spent the whole evening playing like a little ocarina, a little mouth flute.
Hmm.
And I think it was curious because we
Right.
had been sitting and talking, and this was David Sidoti. I think you know who that is. And
Hmm.
we had just camped, and I didn't want to start a fire right away. And so we let it get dark, and we sat in the dark for a long time, and we heard something across the river, and
Right.
we were camped right on the banks of a river in the green swamp, and we heard something over there, and he didn't know what it was, and I didn't know what it was. It was making a lot of noise,
Right.
and so we listened to it for a long time, and eventually we did start a fire and talked, and then he had his little pull along and I sleep in my car. So the next morning I got up and I was going to walk down to the porta potty, and whoever decided where to put the porta potty was not a camper, because you had to walk down this long canopied road to the edge of a meadow, and they put the porta potty right back there, there, because I guess the road in was a little rough, and the guy who dropped it off didn't want to come all the way to the camp, but they moved it since then. And I was walking and something was pacing me. I'd walk and it would walk, and I would stop and it would stop. And so all the way to the bathroom, we're kind of playing around, and I went down there and got to the porta potty, went past it, and then I came back to it, and it followed me, and I thought, well, dummy, you should have walked all the way out into the meadow and say, you could have saw it at the wood line. So I went back out, but it didn't follow me. And so I used the porta potty, went back and told David. And the part of that story, I don't know if you heard or not, was later that day I was with a lady, and she was Cherokee. And we were walking down the same road, and she said she'd had the same experience. And when we got to the porta potty, on the other side of it was a little tree, and she said, look, it left you a gift. And it was a big, probably a vulture feather. It was probably about this big.
Yeah. I remember that.
I picked it up and I was carrying it, and I eventually just got bored carrying it. And so somewhere out in the woods, I put it down. I didn't throw it down. I put it up on a tree branch and left it there and came back. And when we came back through, she said, look, and I don't know if it's the same one or another one, but I have it out in the other room because that time I kept it. And so I don't know. And the second time I was paced, I remembered it was a beautiful day, and I didn't feel good. We had gone out on a just on a night hike that night, and we probably walked about 2-3 miles, and we'd gotten way out in the middle of the woods and found a footprint, and I had gotten a group of 6 police officers to go with me, and only 3 of them had actually done the walk, and one of them went back. So there were 3 of us. And when we got out in the middle of nowhere, and we were on a deer trail, walking through the swamp, and we found a fresh footprint. And the guys are like, we're out here and nobody knows where we are. I think we should go back. So I'm like, okay. So we went back. And that was like that evening, probably around midnight. And I couldn't sleep that night. And there was something wrong with me physically. And I knew my body wasn't acting right. It should be tired. And it wasn't. And so the next morning I didn't feel well. And I got up and I played around with the flute a little bit. And the guys, these guys cooked. Oh my goodness. So I had breakfast and then still didn't feel good and tried to take a nap. And I had a favorite spot. It was beautiful. And I told him I'm going to go down the river a little ways further and just rest and see if I can get to feeling better. And so I went down this little place. I drove in my car, and I always turn it around so I'm facing out, and I sat down and I ate an apple and I was watching the river, and there was an absolutely humongous alligator. Probably, I don't judge distance, but a ways down there, but you could still tell he was pretty humongous. And I watched him lazily swim across the river, and I'm eating my apple and I'm just relaxing and trying to feel better. And something starts walking towards me. And along the river, there were all of these huge palmettos. And I mean, they were tall. Palmettos can get big, big, big. And something was walking towards me. And I thought, it's Bigfoot. It's a human, and it's not the humans I left because they were going to stay in camp.
Right.
And I don't, this is a gated area. You lock yourself in when you get there, which can be a little scary when I go by myself. So anyway, you have to get permission, and So anyway, it was a gated area, and I thought I just got the distinct impression it wanted my spot. It just wanted to enjoy the river where I was enjoying the river, and it didn't like me being there. And so I got up, put the folding chair in the bed of my truck, and got my camera out and did a slow 380 all the way around and came all the way back around the river and came back there. And I thoroughly looked at this film or this video after I was done. Wasn't anything there, nothing you could see. Went back to where the guys were and told them I was going home, which I did. Then I got about halfway home and started, this sounds gross, coughing up a lot of blood. Um, and so I spent that night in the hospital. But I knew that night, I knew my body wasn't right.
Yeah.
And so I don't know if he was chasing me out, telling me to go home, but because he knew I was sick, or if he just wanted my spot, but he wanted me out of there. That was my distinct impression.
Yeah.
So I thought, first time, curious. He wanted to look at this human that had been playing
Right.
music all night. Second time, he wanted me gone. And
Yeah.
so two different experiences and two different feelings with them. So I don't know. It could have been just an animal, and it could have been my impression. I could have put those feelings on just an animal, or it could have been, what I thought. I don't know.
When I was
Oh, he
when
said, did you get zapped? No, I didn't get zapped.
um, when I was going out by myself a lot,
Uh-huh.
I would get feelings, and I would automatically know that I wasn't alone, you know.
Mm-hmm.
And I can remember several times walking out in the brush and just, it'll be fine, and then all of a sudden I'll get that hinky feeling, and I'm like, all right, where you at? And I'll talk to them, you know, all right, where you at? That type of thing. And I've been paced. I can't even count the times I've been paced, especially in and out of the cemetery. I mean, because that washout, the ground level is eye level when you're walking up that washout.
Yeah, that's spooky. I mean, so when I was there, it was over your head.
Yeah. I mean, it's a perfect ambush point,
Yeah.
But I can't tell you how many times I've made that trek up and down that hill and heard stuff, off in that brush at, right at this level, you can hear these footfalls. But I never felt like they was trying to run me out. I never have, Now that one time that I caught that eye shine up there, according to Jason, that was a tiger. I don't know what it was. I just know it was big.
Mm-hmm.
I did turn around back out then. There were several of us that went up there one time. We found a game trail. There's a game trail. I think I showed it to you back on the back side of the cemetery.
Uh-huh.
And I took 2 steps towards that game trail. I said, come on, guys, let's go down here. And it was pitch black. It was like midnight or so. And I took a couple of steps towards that game trail, and you hear, deep in that game trail. And you felt it as much as you heard it. And D was there was 4 of us, and he was last in line back there, and we were single file. I hear him from the back, hey, it's time to go.
Wow. Well, we were up there and we found like this place that could have been the sentinel tree for things watching,
Mm-hmm.
like if they were watching us. And then out at the bottom, it almost looked like a bedding area at the bottom of that tree where that was like its hangout.
Yeah.
Something hung out there and watch the trail to make sure it was safe. So,
Well, I haven't figured out, and because there's not a lot of snow like they have up north down here, and that cedar tree up there on the backside of the cemetery has always baffled me because all the limbs, um, all the limbs just on one side of the tree. I think I showed y'all that tree, and they're stripped from about 15 feet up all the way down, and they're all piled up at the bottom. And when we first found it, all those limbs were green. Something had been laying in those limbs. What could do that besides a Bigfoot? You know, um, and it's a, and like I said, it's a cedar tree. It's a natural bug repellent. So
Yeah. Good
there's
job.
just, that's when always talk about when you go out, you end up with a lot more questions than you do answers. That's one of them. I mean, it's like, what else could have done that? You know,
Yeah.
a lot of people have said, well, a limb fell and stripped all the. Okay, but where's the limb?
Yeah.
That big to strip all the limbs off of something from, there's no evidence of that. Well, it's probably the wind. Nothing else is touched around here. I mean, you can't tell me that wind just hit this tree in the middle of the woods. But I don't know. It's just those things are unexplainable. It's like the tree twist that I found out there. This thing was this big around. I couldn't get both hands around it.
Hmm.
And it was twisted so much that it just exploded. It looked like one of those lanterns that you make out of construction paper when you're a kid, you
Hmm.
know. And the tree was still alive. It was fresh. We looked and looked and looked for tool marks, vehicle marks, all kinds of footprints. We didn't even find any footprints, you know. But I got to tell you, I think these things are good enough to not leave footprints when they don't want to, because
Hmm.
they are masters of their environment.
Yeah.
I think the footprints we find, they're either Dukesters here, um,
Oh,
um, or just luck of the draw. I mean, let's see. Corey asked, Tex, how many times have you heard them pacing you and you could hear them rustling the leaves just a split second behind your steps? I I couldn't even put a number to it. I've been out there so much by myself that, and I heard them so many times. It's just it was old hat. I mean, like I said, it got to where I was like, I would hear, okay, I hear you, you know. Um, so I couldn't put a number to it, but it's a lot. Let's go through some of these comments and questions,
okay.
because I know you'll have some. Let's see, I've got them highlighted here. Brian says, I don't either, but the unnatural and really evil things that some folks encounter are from that side. That goes for people too. The things that steal our peace and disrupt our lives come from there. And that must have been when we were talking about the non-natural side. And yeah, I have to agree. There are things that are out there that don't have our best interests at heart.
Yeah.
Batman says, what if there's a dogman of sorts back in the day but died out? What if they were made by the big guys to control and wipe out people at in the end of times? Well, I do think it's very possible that I think it's very probable that these critters are being weaponized. Why wouldn't they? I mean, we know that we know that other nations have tinkered with it. You know, if you think we haven't, you're fooling yourself. Um,
Yeah. Well, right now they have CRISPR technology, which is for
mhm,
gene splicing. You can actually buy a ready-made a thing you can splice into a gene for certain outcomes. And like I said, we don't know what pre-flood technology was. We think they
right.
were primitive people, but they could have manufactured. Why did God destroy everything off the face of the earth if it was just
Yeah.
people that were bad. You know, could have just destroyed them, but everything. And like right now, you think of GMO cotton, GMO tomatoes, GMO, all these things.
Yeah.
And once you introduce it, it's permanent. You can't unintroduce it.
Right.
And like right now, when fields that are non-GMO are next to GMO fields, it's the GMO fields that put their pollen and their GMO over and actually make the non-GMO into GMOs. And so I don't know if you've read like in India and other places where they handle the GMO cottons and some of the GMO products that they're breaking out in rashes that they're people are allergic to them, just a lot of stuff. And so when I think of that, it's like our Dogman being created. You know, is it something that is a weapon? And why now are there so many? I don't remember hearing about Dogmen growing up.
I don't know.
In Bigfoot.
Yeah. Well, see, and I don't know, and I go back and forth on that all the time. I don't know if it's the fact that the world just gotten smaller with all the technology. People are more willing to come forward. But I mean, if you think about it, we did have stories, you know, because there was almost a media blackout of weird things, you know, in the, you know, 40s to 70s. You really didn't hear a whole lot about that stuff. You know, Loch Ness Monster, sure. But, and, you know, you had the Yeti thing come out and you had the Bigfoot thing come out, but you didn't hear encounter stories like, you know, like we hear. And I think that was because nobody wanted to talk about the weird stuff. It was all, you know, straight down the middle. This is the news and blah, blah, and everybody sees stuff as crazy type thing. Brian says a Pacific Northwest native culture, Sasquatch is represented on their totem poles. They have stories that are passed down inside clans and not even shared with other clans. It is prestigious and sacred. Yeah, I mean, and unfortunately, you know,
I had the good fortune to hear a Tlingit storyteller, and the Tlingits are Alaskan, and I got to listen to him. And afterwards, I asked him, and they have a legend about it, about when they actually killed or got a being that was something like a Bigfoot into a pit and burned it because it was being obnoxious. And they said that's where mosquitoes came from. The smoke that came out as they were burning this creature turned into the mosquitoes. That was interesting. Yeah.
Real quick, Hilton, has anyone seen a confirmed dog woman? Just haven't personally heard. Look up Kirk Stokes. His stuff is kind of rough to watch because you don't have a whole lot of technology. But oh god, he gets close to these figures. If I'm not mistaken, he was very close to one at one point. In the because he goes out and hunt and hikes for days at a time, deep in the woods. Lurchalot says the flood didn't cover the entire earth from what he's found in his research. I've heard that. How can we ever know? You know, I mean,
there's been localized floods,
right.
You know, but worldwide, the marks of the flood are everywhere. You find fossils and layers of earth, and you find a whole, like in North America, there's this huge area, and it's been a long time since I researched it, where all of the geological layers that are supposed to be going this way is upside down. I mean, thousands and thousands of square miles of earth. It's just, everything's reversed.
Wow.
And so yeah, so I think worldwide flood it's not hard for me to believe.
Yeah.
Um,
It may not have covered every peak. I don't know. Um,
well, it killed everything. So if there was any place to go, people would have went.
well, I don't know. I don't know. I think it's like the whole Dogman thing. I think there was in my opinion, I think there was a few that probably survived the flood somehow. I don't know how, but I don't know. Brian says,
A dog
oh,
that
yeah, well, and you know what? If you think about it, it may have covered everything, but even now we have floating islands. So, who's to say? I mean, something like that could have happened. Brian says, I think it passed down. He's talking about whales.
one.
Passed down. One whale noticed it worked. He's talking about flipping um, the sharks upside down and taught the others. We think, well, yeah, well, logically, but it had to be by accident, you know. Um, and we think, and he says, we think we're the only reasoning and problem solving creatures, and we are not. I completely agree. Um, because you got an octopus that can get out of a sealed jar.
Oh yeah, they're smart.
um,
Um,
my J says orcas are an old species. They have a dialect they teach their young, and genetics have memory, so hunting techniques are ingrained in their genes. Possibly. If that's the
possibly.
case, though, um, very few animal species, their babies are just let go. Um, even what we call lower life forms, sometimes have a nursery. So I don't know.
Instincts might be like a genetic memory.
Hmm.
Have you ever looked into like heart transplants and how when they transplant a human heart into the recipient, that it brings with it memories from the deceased person? Have you ever looked into that? That is an odd study. Even other things that are transplanted, suddenly people like something they never liked. Or like one person, when she had a heart transplant, she actually knew the heart she got was from somebody who had been pushed down a flight of stairs. And
Mm.
she knew it and went back and actually helped to find the person that had murdered the donor.
Yeah, I think I heard something about that.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's
Now,
weird.
there's instinctive memories and just instinct itself. It's either
Right.
something that got implanted or it could be the free fall uh,
I think
intelligence that everything it had.
probably the strongest instinct that we have, I think, would be suckling.
Well, babies do that in the womb. They suck their thumb before they're born to get
Yeah,
their mouth muscles in shape
yeah.
for suckling when they're born.
Um, Wood says there's a group of killer whales that worked with the local fishing boats every season to help catch other whales. The fishermen would let them eat the parts they wanted and then pull in the rest. Interesting. Brian says orca brains are 10 times larger than ours. To a creature that can scan you with infrasound and see everything physical about you, a phrase like "How are you" would seem stupid. Thank you, Spock. He said something very like that in the voyage home, very much like that in the voyage home. Um,
Well, usually we ask and we don't care. We
yeah,
just
actually, I think it was the woman that was she was given a tour, I believe that anyway, in the movie. But that's one of my favorite Star Trek movies, by the way. YJ says on the coast of British Columbia, we have a few diffipids or orcas. Diffipids. Never. I've never heard that word. I guess it's a pod of orcas. One is peaceful, and the other is really mean, and it is not nice at all to the other ones. Well, like I said, different personalities. Maybe it's like these Bigfoot attacks and everything. Maybe they just had a bad hair day.
Yeah.
Brian says maybe along with each other, dogmen can speak to each other. Well, that's yeah. What we might hear as a whine or a howl means something much more to them. I think the same thing with dogs. I mean, they can communicate by smell and all that kind of stuff. So probably have hearing that far exceeds our pitch and Barry's speech. Yeah. I had a guy tell me that he encountered a dog man that actually spoke English to him. So who knows? And no, it wasn't mind speak. He said it was speech.
Interesting.
Yeah, yeah. That was a long time ago. Lurchlot says I've been stepped on by mushroom hunters while turkey hunting. There you go. Camouflage. If you know the first thing about camouflage, it's not hard to disappear. This is coming from somebody that could take a 51-ton tank and hide it in a stand of trees. So,
yeah,
I'm a strong believer in the art of camouflage. Corey says in Thailand, the same word can have 5 different meanings. They separate the same word now this is up your alley, by the tone they use. Dogman can possibly easily do this same thing with yips. Yeah, very possible. That would be, because everybody don't know you're an interpreter for the deaf,
mm-hmm.
and I'm wondering how would you do that? And is it it's not the same. That's not a universal language, is it? Signing? Okay. YJ says humans and canines cannot breed. It is not possible because the sperm and the eggs are incompatible. But gene splicing is possible. It leads right back to what you were saying. That's why he believes that Dogman is genetic engineering program. I think they are now, and who knows? Maybe that's how they came around in the past. I don't know, but it just seems to me that there's just it's the whole where there's smoke there's fire, deal, and because even in ancient text and art and stuff, these things are portrayed. There's stories about them, so they've been around a lot longer than we've had that technology that I know of.
Yeah.
Batmom says, but is that what humans decided to say about primates not being able to speak? What if humans made it all up because we don't speak the way that primates do? Doesn't mean we are above them. I think they communicate somehow. I mean, it's not speech like we know it. Let's see. Apes can learn how to sign, that's for sure. A lot of people are teaching their babies how to sign before they can talk.
Well, that makes sense because you get this is your large muscle control, and you get this is fine muscle control in your throat. And so you're not even going to learn how to control this for a long time. But you can teach a baby hurt, milk, hungry. You can teach them to say a lot of things.
Yeah, more.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. We did that. Well, my daughter, I can't say me, my daughter, my oldest daughter, did that with my grandson. I thought that was the coolest thing. And she was like, "Do you want more?" More? When he was a little bitty. Um, let's
Deaf
see,
children,
Brian.
deaf
Yeah.
children of deaf parents develop language before hearing children of hearing parents.
Let's see. Brian says, "Image might well be subjective. God is God. What does time mean to the truly eternal? What does form mean to the one that created not just this universe, but multiple? I don't limit God. How could I?" Well said. Um, Hilton says, you can call it taking a photo, taking a shot. And it's talking about the whole camera and gun thing.
Oh,
I Yeah, that's kind of my point. I mean, it's you're pointing at him. I mean, so Brian says, I think monster is a choice. It can be influenced, but is ultimately a choice. People can choose to be monsters. That's true. I think these other things can be monsters too if they choose their actions. Like I said, they have a bad hair day, rip your head off. And that's the, let's see, Duke says you don't need camo. Just stand still next to the tree, and people will walk right by you. That is true. That is true. Situational awareness. We talked about that earlier, Duke.
oh,
People
did,
don't
did
camo.
you did you read that the testimony? It was the people that do the Olympic project, where they actually told people they were going to have a fake, and they showed them. The guy came out dressed as the Sasquatch, and he put on a orange vest, and they said, watch for him, see if you can get a picture of him. And
Yeah,
nobody, the only person that got a picture was taking a picture of something else, and he was in the background. And if our eyes look for things that move, and the Sasquatch don't move,
yep,
everybody thinks they're a stump, or they don't see them because they don't move.
that's true.
And it's excellent. It's an excellent thing to get right by us
Yeah.
because we're looking for something moving.
Well, I and it's like people always talk about, oh well, they misidentified that it was a bear. Well, flip that around. You know, how many times has the Sasquatch been misidentified? I mean, how much, you know, as a bear? I mean, it's probably happened just as much, if not more. um,
That's what people want to see because it makes
yeah,
sense.
yeah, that's true. That's true. Well, we've been at it almost 2 hours. I think I'm going to wrap it up.
Okay. Well, it
Thanks
was
for coming
fun.
on.
Yeah.
Thank you for waking up, especially to come see me. I appreciate that.
Yeah. I'm going to go
Thank
back.
you, everybody. Thank you, everybody, for joining me tonight. I know it was late, but I know some people, they're up late like me. But and then of course we have the you know, the ones on the flip side of the earth that you know, this is almost the only time they can catch a live show. So I like to give them that chance. But again, thank you everybody for coming on tonight. Duke, good to see you, man. Um, Again, Christina, thank you so much. And
Yeah, we got to get together
we will, we
and
will.
go
We got to
outside.
reschedule that outing.
Yeah.
I'm looking at it's probably going to be December before I can do anything.
Okay.
So I'm tomorrow night. I start a 10-day stretch. So it's yeah, not going to be fun.
Sounds grueling.
Yeah, I'm not looking forward to it. 10, 12-hour days in a row. Um, Uncle Sam's going to love me to death
Oh,
because there comes a point where you don't make any money when you work a lot of overtime. Um, Thanks, guys. Actually, this is going to be my last show for the next 10 days. I mean, I'll be in chat, when the other guys when I can break away at lunch and stuff like that. But You won't see me around for a couple of weeks. So I'm going to miss it. But y'all take care and keep your head on a swivel. Try getting better at situational awareness. See, Christina, you take care of yourself, okay?
You too. Thank you.
Thank you. We'll see y'all later. Y'all have a good one.